You're listening to the Cricket Podcast.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Cricket Podcast, where we're previewing the third test between India and England. We've done England squad news and England being bored and England going on holiday. Really not that much about cricket in part one.
No. Well, I did have one more point to make actually about the England squad and like the selection thing. It was sort of more,
finish that off.
Yeah, and it's sort of more about thinking. So one of the very recent things, and I think we've seen it in the SA20, if I'm not mistaken, is the whole picking the team sheet after the toss, and that is something that I think in this particular test, this third test, would be like a real interesting case, like test case for that, because where the word on the street is that generally Rajkot's really good for batting. Maybe there's a bit in it for the seamers to start with. By the end, spin comes into play, and with England's predicament of Leach, the spinners, one seamer, that kind of thing, it's the exact kind of thing where I could see like England, if they won the toss and batted first, going with the three spinners. If they lost the toss and bowled and had to bowl first, maybe the two seamers would be the right play because they're not going to be bowling in the fourth innings, and maybe two spinners just for the one innings where you're bowling at India in the third innings would be a way to go. So it's a T20 thing.
So what you're saying,
right?
It's
a T20 thing, but I think this is the kind of thing where it'd be quite interesting to see whether something different happened, like either side of the toss result for England's selection. I don't know what you think about that, but I thought it was.
Well, I think
it's quite a niche case, but it was quite interesting.
You'd have to change the rules of Test cricket.
Yeah, but they did it in T20.
What you're advocating is between now and Thursday that you're going to convene.
Yeah, I'm not saying it's going to happen. I'm like, it's a thought experiment, Jack. Like it's a hypothetical, right? Like, do you think it's something that you could see in Test cricket? Do you think it would work? I probably wouldn't. Most of the time, you wouldn't do anything. But this is the kind of situation where I think you might actually see some mileage in it.
Maybe if you are playing away, you get to name your team after the toss to even things out,
balance things out.
Maybe just produce more consistent pitches around the world so that there are more competitive test matches,
Well, yeah. But, in the absence of that, very unlikely.
Let's talk India. Let's talk India. There's about a million topics. I'm going to run through, what we definitely need to talk about, and then you can tell me what I've missed. Kohli is out for 3 tests. Jadeja might be out for this test. King Legend probably back. Jasprit Bumrah playing the third test. Shreyas Iyer can't bat more than 30 balls because of an injury, not because of his skill limitations. Although, it's who's to say? Who's to say which
we can find out.
Which, yeah, exactly. Where do you want to start? Have I missed anything? I think that's probably
Akashdeep got called up, but that's
Akashdeep's been called up.
Yeah.
Right, let's start with Akashdeep. So I can do this in 2 seconds.
All right.
What is it in? I think specifically Indian cricket, but I think a lot of countries do this a little bit as well. These kind of lifetime achievement award selections, where the guy isn't going to actually feature in the team properly for a more than a one-off game, or maybe a couple of matches. They're not actually long-term planning here. But they've knocked around the Ranji for a while, so they're going to get a cap. I don't understand that. I'm not expecting you to answer it. Rhetorical, but that's my observation on.
Yeah,
I don't even.
No, it's weird, isn't it? You'd expect to have like a next cab off the rank kind of thing. Someone that you're thinking will be maybe a future player that you could bring in, but no, you're right. It's just like, who's the next one who averages about 20-ish. To be fair, Akashdeep averages 23 in first-class cricket, so it's
not too bad. No, I'm not saying he's a bad cricketer. I'm saying that it's
he's not going to be replacing Mohammad Siraj anytime soon, is he?
Yeah, he's actually a bit young. You know what? I might take that back on Akashdeep. He's only 27, so maybe there is a career there.
Maybe,
but yeah. Anyway, Akashdeep done.
Great. Tick that one
Kohli,
off.
let's talk Kohli. Kohli ruled out the series, Max. Personal issues. Obviously, first things first, we wish him well. Hope that whatever is happening is resolved and that he comes back refreshed and doing Kohli stuff, because he is one of the, if not the most engaging on-field players, I would say, with bat and ball, and even when he's sitting in the dugout, it's pretty good. So it's a great shame for cricket. It's a great shame for the series that he is out. What are the repercussions on the India team?
Well, I mean, when it's you can't really look at it too much in isolation, aside from the Virat Kohli is India's best batter, so him not being there is really bad because he's really good. But you have to look at it, I guess, in the spectrum of like everything else. You know, Shreyas Iyer out, Rahane and Pujara no longer in the squad, and you kind of, you know, you've lost your talisman number 4. So, and Shreyas Iyer was filling that role. He's not available. So you're suddenly in this world where the Indian middle order, which was already kind of up in the air a little bit because of the changes, is even more questionable. People, inexperienced players, people who, you know, had a bit of a crack but not necessarily looking that comfortable. You got some people questioning why people like Sarfraz Khan haven't got a game when they average 70 in the Ranji, and you know, he's behind the pecking order in people who average substantially less. It's it just throws up even more questions, doesn't it, for India for these remaining 3 tests, now that their stalwart talisman veteran legend number 4 isn't there. So it's going to be really interesting to see how India go about things. I think King Legend being back is very, very important for a bit of experience at least, because if he can't play, I think the word on the street is that he'll be fine, isn't it? So he'll be there. But even that side, you've got some real selection questions. So it makes life a lot harder for India for these last 3 tests. So it's going to be really interesting to see where they land on selection, and obviously how they all perform. But yeah, obviously echo your sentiments on Kohli, and hope to see him back soon, because phenomenal.
Yeah, it does. It leaves a little bit of a selection question mark for India. I mean, I think the India lineup that we're looking at the moment is probably their worst batting lineup for a decade.
Yeah, I think so.
Maybe, certainly at home. Not to, I mean, there's some obviously some really good players in there, and even the weak links, I've got a ton in them, like Gill last week. But it looks a lot less stable with no Kohli at 3 or 4 rather. No Pujara-like player in that lineup. I mean, there's some of these, Pujara and Rahane, for example, probably had reached the natural conclusion of their Test careers. Yeah, to some extent. I mean, I'm sure.
Pujara's having a season. I think he scored an unbeaten 243 at Rajkot this year in the Ranji.
I'm sure that he could do a job, but I think the difference between, you probably reached the point where the difference between Pujara and Shubman Gill at number 3 is maybe an average of 3 or 4 runs instead of an average of 15 runs. But the potential of Gill to exceed what Pujara will be capable of in the next 2 years is, massively
high. Yeah.
Pujara's not going to average much more than the 35, you wouldn't think, at his age in Test cricket anymore. Whereas Gill could average 50, you would think.
Yeah.
So you can see why. You can see that. That's what I mean by the kind of natural conclusion there. But that does leave a weakness in the India team. And then Patidar coming in for Kohli is a pretty big downgrade. The wicketkeeper situation is, decent keeper, Bharat.
Yeah,
I'd say, but
good keeper.
Rishabh Pant is the player of his generation in some ways. Or was. We'll see what happens when he comes back from injury. And that's a massive downgrade. And then Akshar Patel batting 6 is
Yeah, I mean,
is
that's too
pretty
high.
bonkers as well.
Akshay Patel's a
Yeah.
decent batter, but that's a place too high.
Yeah. So I think it's if India are going to accidentally lose a series, you can see that the fragility of their batting lineup is probably going to be the root cause of that. And we were talking as well after the last test how England spinners have actually out-bowled the India spinners. And probably in the preview we were joking about how it's a very different task for India spinner bowling against England's batters versus the reverse. I'm wondering at this point whether England have
Not the
actually
case
got a better
anymore.
lineup. Yeah.
I know. I mean, honestly, looking at the lineup as it is, and there's every chance India go with Sarfaraz Khan and he comes in and scores 200 in the blink of an eye, and suddenly all the questions go away. But also every chance that doesn't happen, and you have to look at it from an England point of view and think, and this is as good an opportunity. I can't even believe that this is the case. Like from 4 or 5 weeks ago, that England genuinely this could be like their best opportunity of winning a series away in India for ages. Like because they don't come around all that often, and you're playing in India that doesn't have Kohli, might not have Jadeja, and has got a bunch of guys in the middle order who are inexperienced, untried, and it could all fall in a heap. On top of the fact that the tail's got a bit longer as well. It's screaming Washington Sundar selection.
It could be. We'll get to that in a bit. I mean, I just want to head off any conversation about England being favourites or anything like that.
No,
still overwhelming.
Not saying that.
But like before the series, I was giving England a 10% chance of winning any individual Test match, and now I'd probably be saying 25-30%. Like it's not. It really
having already won one as well.
Yeah, it's really not inconceivable to me that India batting card gets inexplicably rolled, and you're loses a match in one innings or one afternoon. Whereas the team that England and I thought India were going to put out, frankly, is a lot more punchy. I mean, like we're looking at KL Rahul returning here as
the saviour,
a big boon to this India side. This is a guy who averages 34 in Test cricket. Like it's not. This isn't the return of the Messiah. Like he might be playing better cricket than at other points in his Test career, but we aren't looking at some Jacques Callis like figure striding in to average 60. Like it's really not that. It's quite a flawed player who makes quite a lot of mistakes in Test cricket. Scored fewer than 2,000 runs. Well capable of flaying England's bowlers. I'll emphasize that, but also well capable of getting 5 and then spooning a catch.
Aren't we all, Jack? Aren't we all capable of doing that?
Interesting times from an India point of view.
It's also a great opportunity for someone, by the way, like from India's point of view. Aside from talking about the risks and all of that, there's a chance for someone there to really make their name and be like, "Yep, it's me. I'm the next number 4, number 5, whatever." Someone
is going to come through for India. Not Jaiswal here. He's already come through.
He's there.
Somebody else. Yeah, somebody else is good. Like one, maybe even 2 players are going to arrive in the next 2 or 3 years, and it will be to some extent normal service resumed. But right now, might even be Kohli coming back. For a couple more years. Say Kohli comes back and Shubman Gill goes on a little run, and then it all looks pretty rosy, doesn't it? Or like you say, Sarfaraz averages 50 in tests. It all looks pretty good, but right now it looks weird. And I don't know if we need to talk about Shreyas that much, but he's probably an example of somebody who could have been that and has failed. And now they're saying he has a back injury. He is a guy who had a herniated disc in his early 20s, I think. So
tried non-surgical intervention, didn't work, so had to have something done. And I wonder if that's got anything to do with his issues against the short ball.
It could be. I mean, like there's other examples. I think Michael Clark, Michael Atherton. not Michael Shreyas, but if you wanted to change his name, maybe he could join the club. Had back issues and then really struggled against the shorter ball later in their careers. Basically couldn't get out the way of it.
Yeah,
I don't know if that's exactly Shreyas's problem, but
no. But you think, I mean,
problem
just if you just sort of think about the physicality of trying to get over the ball and that kind of thing, there's a lot of back involved there, and maybe that's contributed.
And Boomer's going to play. I think we've kind of done the team news.
I can't believe there was even a question of resting him after like a week and a half break. Like, what even was that?
I reckon that was a pre-test series plan. And like it leaked.
Then they realised how good he is.
Well, no, I don't even think that. Like, I think they probably thought, well, the chances are we'll be 2-0 up after the first two tests, so we can give Bumrah 2 weeks off. He's coming back from a bad back injury as well. Remember,
that's true. Yeah,
and that would be a nice break. And then even if England win the third test, the series is still very Bumrah-able. In the final two matches, but now with it at 1-1, you
just can't.
You basically can't, particularly on a wicket. And we haven't talked about it that much, but we're expecting it to be a little bit flatter. Or in the previous two test matches, we've seen
9 centuries. I think it is.
Is it 9 centuries? Yeah, we've seen India score nearly 700. England nearly won a match.
England scored 560 odd, didn't they? Yeah.
Yeah. So
Root, Bairstow, and Stokes all involved in that as well. Players who've played there before and done well. So yeah, I mean, you can't go into a game like that without Jasprit Bumrah. That would be genuinely insane.
I agree. And then Jadeja. Did you mention Jadeja?
Yeah. So I mean, he's back in the squad, but fitness test, isn't it? So it'll be touch and go with Jadeja, and that's another guy is going to be really important just because of the balance to the side. So that's why I think if he's unavailable, I can really see them going with Washington Sundar just as a bit of an insurance policy with the bat. I'm not saying it's the right call because I don't think it is, but I can totally see it happening.
Yeah, I think sort of what's happening with India here. My last note on this. We might have to do a little part 3. Is that there's two views on this India side, and we've done the squad news. We did it in kind of a roundabout way and talked about other things. We didn't really name an 11 or anything like that, so we probably should at some point, maybe in part 3. But all of what we're talking about here, you can categorize it in 2 ways. You can say India have been quite unlucky that all of this stuff is happening at once. Or you can say, and I think this is probably closer to the truth, that this is an example of what transition looks like. If you continue to play players who are maybe not past their cricketing peak, but past their
the end of their career
peak
is in sight, and you So and you need a plan, don't you? You need to know who's going to replace them. It's not like Pujara and Rahane turned around at 29 and be like, actually, you know what? I'm a bit tired. I don't fancy it anymore. I'm going to retire. Like, this has been coming for years, isn't it?
Yeah, sure. But it's hard to do that because you only got 11 spots for the team. But like, what I'm saying is that if you are an India fan, maybe get used to this for a couple of years. Players like Jadeja is what, 34, 35?
I mean,
Rohit's old. Ashwin is old. These are not players that are going to play 15 tests a year anymore. They're as good as Jadeja is, and as much as an athlete he is, it is an unfortunate fact of aging that you get muscle injuries and you get joint soreness.
James Anderson, apparently.
Well, even James Anderson popped his calf, didn't he, against Australia in 2019? And he's extremely rested. James Anderson is India. I think England have got 17 tests this year. If James Anderson plays 9 of them, it would be pretty good going, I think, for him.
Yeah, but no, you're absolutely
right.
And
this is what transition looks like. It's not. It doesn't necessarily look like. Sometimes it is Pujara not being picked anymore, or Rahane, obviously reaching a point where he was no longer able to contribute at the level he needed to. Often what it really looks like is that players who you think are your A-team players are only playing half your matches because they literally can't get themselves on the field.
And it's obviously more painful with a generational side with the talent of someone like India because naturally they're so good they play for longer, and you're picking them for longer, and then the chances of those issues cropping up are higher and higher. So it's I guess a victim of your own success. The higher you go, the harder you fall. That's it, isn't it?
I do think this. Yeah, I think so. I think it's to some extent unavoidable though. Like they happened to England at the World Cup, and Ed Smith, the old selector, wrote an article in the New Statesman talking about how it was a bit more complex than this, but how England had basically failed to prepare for their own failure. But how in a sense do you do that?
You? Yeah.
It's
good point. Can I have the solution, please, Ed?
players players are good until they're not, or players are fit until they're not.
And if you have a crystal ball that's going to tell you exactly when they're going to stop being good / fit, then you're going to be a very, very rich person, aren't you?
So anyway, England. We'll talk about India's probable 11, and then I want to do our NFL squad and their SO20 and all of that after the break.
Yeah.